Mr. Zimmerman here. Hamlet Act I Scene 2. In this scene, King Claudius addresses the court, and he talks about his marriage to the queen. He talks about Fortinbras and his eagerness to attack Denmark. He talks about, he addresses Laertes, gives him permission to leave the country, and then he talks to Hamlet and convinces him to stay in the country. We also see Hamlet's first soliloquy after the all the people leave the palace main room there. Hamlet gives his first soliloquy, and then Hamlet hears of the ghost from his friends who have been, from the guards, who are friends of his, but also from Horatio, who went out to see the ghost with the guards earlier. They were out there in scene 1. Now, we'll ignore this little bit of the play from here. We already addressed that. Here we get, in Act 1, Scene 2, we see Claudius enter the room. Claudius's wife, Gertrude, who is the widow of the dead king, and then Polonius and his son Laertes and his daughter Ophelia. Now, Polonius is an unusual character. We will get to know him a little bit. For now, let's just recognize that he has a son Laertes and a daughter Ophelia. His son wants to go back to France where he's been living, and his daughter lives in the court with Polonius. Okay, we'll find out who Polonius is when we get there a little bit later on here. So Claudius starts by addressing the court, and in his first bit of speech, he says basically that Hamlet, his dear brother, is the memory of his death is green, meaning it's new, it's recent. But he says discretion fights with nature. Discretion is wisdom. Wisdom pushes my nature. My nature is to be sad at my brother's death, but discretion makes me think of things that are more important than just the fact that my brother is dead. And therefore, I made this decision. My decision was that our sometime sister, is the king talking, okay? Our sister, our one-time sister, now our queen, the imperial jointress to this warlike state, have we taken to wife. Okay? Claudius is saying, since, even though my brother is dead, I have important things to think about. So I married his widow and became the king. Okay? Now, you might think that's strange, but it is not strange. In medieval times, that would be a perfectly reasonable way for the kingdom to proceed after following the death of a king. Okay? Claudius is the king's brother. He's still in the royal family. He is still young enough to be the king. Hamlet, the younger, is in college. He's sort of a teenager, 20-something person. Now, there are teenage or 20-something kings. They do exist. However, in this particular case, the fact that Claudius takes over the crown, the throne, is not unusual. Now, not only can we acknowledge it's not unusual, he says, your better wisdoms, he's talking to the court here. He's talking to all the courtiers, the lords who are attendant, all the people in the court that are important enough to be at this ceremony, in his presence. He says, we have not, nor have we, means we have not barred your better wisdoms. We haven't gone against your will in marrying the queen. You have freely gone with this affair along. You've gone right along with this. So, thank you. We thank you. Now, our thanks, us, again, he's being the king, so he's using the royal we, but in fact, he's, here, our thanks probably is the queen as well. Okay? He goes on now and he says, let's deal with Fortinbras. Okay. You know, he says to the court, Fortinbras has a weak supposal of our worth. He thinks that we are in weakness now with the dead king and the new king in Denmark. Doesn't he doesn't think we're strong, and he thinks that he has some advantage since we're dealing with this changing of the kings here. So he has not failed to pester us with message importing the surrender of those lands lost by his father, with all bonds of law, to our most valiant brother. Hamlet won them legally. I mean, he killed old Fortinbras and he obtained his land. Young Fortinbras says, it may be legal, but I don't like it. Now, just note here, Fortinbras and Hamlet. There's a senior and a junior Fortinbras, senior and junior Hamlet. Senior Hamlet is now dead. Senior Hamlet actually had killed Senior Fortinbras. Now, we're going to hear what Hamlet Jr. is unhappy about in a little bit. We already have heard that Fortinbras Jr. is unhappy about the legal taking over of his lands by Senior Hamlet. Now, the fact Senior Hamlet is dead, maybe I can get my lands back. The lands that my father abandoned. Now, if we're looking at a parallel, you'd think, oh yeah, well, his father just died and now his uncle is in charge. Remember, please remember, the throne means nothing to him. Hamlet is not at all concerned with the fact that his uncle is now the king of Denmark. Doesn't bother him. It's something else. But this upset parallel, that does exist. The result is Fortinbras wants revenge. He wants to get back what he lost. Hamlet will want revenge too. We just don't know how his revenge is going to work out yet. So, let's move on to Voltman and Cornelius. These guys. The king says, now, for ourselves and for this time of meeting, let's talk about what we're going to do. I'm going to send you guys to Norway with messages. And those messages, you're going to Old Norway. Old Norway is not young Fortinbras. Okay? Old Norway is the uncle to young Fortinbras. Okay? Old Norway is the equivalent of if Hamlet's uncle is Claudius, and Claudius has some level of control over Hamlet. He's his king. Fortinbras's uncle is Norway, who has some level of control over him. So this parallel, this is how we recognize who Fortinbras is and why he is. This parallel is fairly significant as a symbol in the play. So, Claudius says, I'm going to send you two guys, to talk to the King of Norway with this letter that explains our situation and explains what I feel about this. Go and take care of that. And they say, yes, we'll go and do that. Okay? Then he goes on. What wouldst thou have, Laertes? Now, this whole little paragraph here where he identifies Laertes and says, what's up, Laertes? What are you interested in? This is where we hear Claudius sort of, he's not flattering the father of Laertes, but he is honoring him. He's speaking of him in a flattering way. He says, You cannot speak of reason to the Dane and lose your voice. Okay, you have the power to talk to me. What would you want? That would not be my offer. I'd give you anything because your father is vital to the throne of Denmark. Okay? The Danish throne is so indebted to your father, I'll do anything you want. What would you like? Laertes says, I just want to go home. I want to go home to France. Okay? And the king asks Polonius, is that okay with you? Polonius says, sure. He has gotten from me my slow leave. He has beaten me down until I've given in and said, yes, you can go. So Claudius says, take your leave and go to France. But no, my cousin Hamlet and my son. So here's the final address of this affair, this holding of court that he's doing. He says, now, Hamlet, my cousin and my son. Cousin is not cousin in the sense of what we think of as cousin. Cousin simply means relative here. My relative, and not just my relative, but my son, my stepson. Okay? Now, Hamlet says something that is very telling here. He says, a little more than kin and less than kind. The way it's phrased here, too many family ties there for me. An aside means that he's talking so no one else can hear. When Hamlet says this line, he's literally talking to the audience. He turns to the audience like as if he's telling them something. And that indicates that he's thinking in his head, that no one else on stage can hear him. Okay? That's what an aside is. It's a very short soliloquy is what it is. Now, when he says a little more than kin and less than kind, he is saying there's too many family ties there for me, but he's doing it this way. Kin and kind. If you are kin and kind of your father, you're related to him, and you're the same type of guy as he is. Kin and kind is a figure of speech that would make sense to Shakespeare's audience. Now, interestingly, kin, if he was just told by Claudius, you're my son. Now, for a father to say, you're my son, and then to think about him being kin and kind, that makes sense if he is like his father. Hamlet is saying, I ain't like my father, my stepfather. I ain't like you. I am, however, more than kin because I'm not only your stepson, I'm also your nephew. Okay? So I'm a little more kin than I even care to be. But I am less than kind. I am not the type of person you are. And not only that, I don't particularly feel kind to you. Now, if he said this out loud, the king would probably say, well, being a little ungrateful there, what the heck is your problem? You need to shape up your deal here, or something like that. He would be angry, right? But since it is an aside, since it is quiet and no one else can hear, he gets away with it. The audience hears it, though. This is the first indication to the audience that Hamlet is upset. So Claudius goes on. He says, how is it the clouds are hanging on you? Why are you so depressed looking? And Hamlet says, no, I'm not depressed, my lord. I am too much in the sun. I am too much in the sun. There's too much sun in me. Sun as in sunshine? Okay. I'm out in the sunshine with everybody else, and we shouldn't be. We should be mourning. It should be dark. Things should be unhappy right now. But I'm out here in the sun with all of you. And I'm too much in the sun because, once again, I'm your son as well as my father's son. So again, it's like a double pun. or it's a pun, both being the son of the new father and being in the sun, as in being out in the open rather than mourning. Now, if we look at these two right here, this is an important characteristic of Hamlet. The first two lines he says are sarcastic, mocking jokes. Okay? And they're not just sarcastic, mocking jokes like having fun. They're sarcastic, mocking jokes that cover up his deep, deep, deep depression and anger. Okay? They can be taken two ways. They can be misunderstood. He says, I'm too much in the sun. It's too bright out. Perhaps his stepfather could say, yeah, maybe you're a little bit overwhelmed by how things have moved on, and you feel like you're being pushed out into the sun. I get that. Okay, that wouldn't be a problem. But being too much of a son, having too many fathers, the king probably wouldn't catch that. Just like the king wouldn't understand. Well, the king doesn't get to hear more than kin and less than kind. He probably would understand that if he had heard it. Now, the next person to speak is Gertrude. This is Hamlet's mother. Now, Hamlet clearly has told us he doesn't like his stepfather. That's what he told the audience. Now, when his mother speaks, she says, cast thy nighted color off. Stop with your nighted color, the color of night, black, darkness. He just says he's pushed into the sun too early, and she says, no. We should be in the sun. Cast your night off and look like a friend on Denmark. Denmark here is the name of the king. Look friendly upon your new stepfather. Don't be sad. Don't forever with thy veiled eyes. They're veiled. They're veiled with sadness. Okay, like a widow should wear a black veil. Don't let your veiled eyes seek your noble father in the dust. It's common. It's normal. Everyone that lives must die. Okay? So we need to move on. Hamlet says, yes, it's common. It is common, meaning it's normal. And yes, it's common, meaning it is like for simple, normal peasant people. Listen, Mom, my dad was a king. You, of all people, should know that. You were his queen. That's what's wrapped up in his comment. Yeah, it's common, Mom. Right? And she says, well, if that's true, if you understand that it's common, why seems it so particular with thee? Now, why does it seem so particular to you? Okay? This does come through in the modern translation, but I want it really clear here. The problem is the word seems. Okay? Hamlet has been asked, why do you seem so sad then? If you understand that people die, why do you seem so sad? And Hamlet's response is not, well, I'm sad because Dad is dead, or I'm sad because of whatever. He says instead, I don't seem sad, Mother. Seem, Madam? Nay, it is particular with me. It is bad for me that my father is dead. I know not seems. I don't know what that means for it to seem bad. And he goes on, 'tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, nor the fruitful river of the eye, nor the dejected havior of the visage, together with all forms, moods, shapes of grief that can denote me truly. What's that? It is not these things, my dark jacket, my suits of solemn black, my dark clothes, windy suspiration of breath, gasping, breathing, being sad, crying, fruitful river of the eye, dejected behavior, frowning, with all forms, moods, shapes of grief. All that stuff is not enough to denote me truly, denote to define me. It's not enough to show you how sad I am. These indeed a person can, these indeed seem, for they are actions that a man might play. But I have within, which passeth show, these but the trappings and suits of woe. If a person is acting this way, they can be seeming, they can be faking, they can in fact be acting. I'm not acting, Mom. And the hint there is, you are. Look at you. You're married to the guy, to my dad's brother. You went on and married right away. And look, my dad's brother. Oh, my brother is dead, and so I think I'll get married. Right? You can feel the sarcasm in what he's saying. He is talking about people who are faking their sadness. I'm not faking my sadness, Mom. You might be, but I'm not. Claudius then joins in. And he says, in the same way, now I'm not going to go into great depth with him, but he says, Hamlet, it's commendable in your nature to give these mourning duties to your father. It's good for you to be sad for your father, to cry for him. But, he says, to persevere, to continue in this sadness, in obstinate condolement, okay? To continue being sad longer and longer, 'tis unmanly grief. It makes you look a bit weak. As a matter of fact, it's incorrect to heaven. Heaven is the one who is where the decisions are made about who lives and dies. And you think you know better than the one in heaven who decides who lives and dies? Is that what you're saying with your grief? Okay. It makes you look simple and unschooled. No, unschooled, uneducated, which is something that that comes up several different times. The fact that Hamlet knows better than other people, even the theology, the honesty, the truth of his situation, and things like the ghost and things like sadness. He feels like he's got he knows better. And so when Claudius says it makes you look unschooled, well, frankly, it kind of does. Now he goes on. He says, again, 'tis a fault to heaven. Everyone has lost their father. Everyone will lose their father. We pray you, throw to earth this unprevailing woe. Okay? Stop being sad. Think of us, and us here is me, the king. Think of us as a father. Okay? Let the world take note. You are the most immediate to our throne, and with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears his son, do I impart toward you. Just to be clear, Hamlet, you are next in line for the throne. So come on, perk up, be happy. Be thankful that I'm your dad. Get ready, someday you're going to be on the throne. Let's just move ahead, shall we? As a matter of fact, for your intent to go back to college, no, it's retrograde to our desire. It's against what we want. Please stay here. And Gertrude says, don't let your mother lose her prayers, Hamlet. Stay with us. Don't go to Wittenberg. And Hamlet, much as he's angry with the situation, he says, I shall, in all my best, obey you, madam. I'll do what you want. I'll stay here. Okay? Claudius says, oh, that's lovely. That's great. Okay, let's go and party. Hamlet's staying in Denmark. Everything is good. Everything is happy. Let's go and relax. Let's go and drink. We're going to go and drink and shoot off the cannons and have a good time. And they all leave except Hamlet. And that leads us to his soliloquy. So, his soliloquy. Now, I need to make very clear something about soliloquies, okay? Soliloquy means solo locution, alone speaking, okay? Talking alone on stage is a soliloquy. It is particularly important. Well, it's common in some plays, particularly common in Shakespeare plays, and important for one extreme reason. And this is probably the most significant quality of soliloquies. Everything that is said in soliloquy, they say things are said in soliloquy if they're spoken during a soliloquy. Everything is always the truth. Okay? The person who's speaking is, in fact, thinking out loud on stage. That's what soliloquy does in the theater. Okay, nowadays, if we're watching a movie, if we're watching any kind of movie and we hear the voice of the actor talking to us while we're watching the movie, it's pretty clear he's not speaking out loud. He's thinking something in his head while we watch him do something. That voiceover, that is soliloquy. Okay? It's just in Shakespeare's time, there's no way to do that. So, what they do, when there's nobody on stage, you're solo out there on stage, when you speak, this is you thinking out loud. And it's always the truth. You're not deceiving anyone. There's nobody there to deceive. So, you might be wrong. You might be in error. You might be mistaken. You might be flawed in your reasoning. But it is always what you, as the character, believe to be true. It's always true to yourself because you're the only one listening. You, the character. Okay? So, with that, let's start with Hamlet's soliloquy. He says, "Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. I wish my flesh could melt." My flesh, my muscles, my bones, my body. I wish it could disappear. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. Self-slaughter is what it sounds like. Suicide. Okay? To slaughter yourself. And when he says, I wish the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter, I wish God had not made suicide a sin, is what he's saying. Okay? Because I just want to kill myself. But since God made suicide a sin, I can't do that. Again, his theology really drives his decisions here. Okay? Then he goes on, he says, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. The world seems, it's like an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. Weeds are rank and gross in nature. What's possessing the world right now? Well, his stepdad, who's gross and rank in nature, and even his mom, who has married this nasty guy. That's who's in charge of the world now. Yeah, I hate this world. It's an unweeded garden. Okay. Then he goes on and he says that it should come to this. But 2 months dead. No, not so much. Not 2. So excellent a king that was to this. Okay, 2 months dead. That's about how long it's been since Hamlet died. We think. We never really get an exact time. We hear 2 months, a little more than 2 months, maybe 4 months. We don't know for sure, but it seems too short for Hamlet. He says, so excellent a king that was to this. Hyperion to a satyr. Okay? Hyperion is a Greek, god-like person. A satyr is a Greek little woody devil that lives out in the woods. Satyr is the guy whose Pan was a satyr. He's half goat and half man. And one of the things about a satyr is that they're allegedly very interested in having relations with people. They're sort of sex hounds. And Hyperion was his father, Hamlet. The satyr that's now on the throne is Claudius. Because look, he's even hooked up with my mother, right? Hyperion, Hamlet, however, he was so loving to my mother that he would not even want the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. Heaven and earth must I remember. There's a lot of these exclamations of how horrible he feels. He says, why, she would even hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. She did. She loved him as if she couldn't have enough of him, and yet, within a month, this time a month, let me not think on it, frailty thy name is woman, a little month, or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe all tears, crying like a widow, even she, oh God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer, she married with my uncle. Okay, so he is a goat man, and she is dumber than a beast, or rougher than a beast, coarser than a beast. This is what he feels about his mom and uncle. Okay? Now, I mentioned that he is in love with, he loves his father, he loves his mother, but her lack of apparent love for his father has destroyed his respect for her. That's what we're seeing here. So she married my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. He is, if my father was Hercules, or if I and Hercules are about as much alike as Claudius and my father, right? And I'm no Hercules, is what he's saying. Again, they got married so quick. It is not, nor it cannot come to good. But break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. I can't talk. I can't bring this up out loud. Oh, man, life sucks. There's his depression. And we see it in his first soliloquy. Now, with that part of the story in our heads, we're reminded Horatio and Marcellus have been out looking at ghosts. And Marcellus said, I know where we can find Hamlet this morning. Remember that from the first scene? So they show up in the room. They walk in. And they say hello. And they skip ahead. They say, Horatio says, I came to your father's funeral. Yep, you're in Denmark at my father's funeral. There was a wedding right afterwards. Hamlet mockingly says, yeah, that's because they didn't want to waste the funeral food, so they had a wedding, and so then they could save money on the banquet. And Hamlet says, methinks I see my father. I think about my dad. Oh, it's almost like I can see him. Horatio says, where, my lord? Where is he? Now, we know that Horatio just saw a ghost of his father. Saw a ghost of Hamlet's father. So when Hamlet says, oh, I think I see my father, Horatio takes it kind of literally, and he's, what, you're seeing him too? And Hamlet says, in my mind's eye, I'm picturing him in my head. And Horatio says, yeah, okay, all right. I saw him once. He was a good king. Hamlet says, oh, he was a man. Horatio says, my lord, I think I saw him last night. What? You saw him last night? Yes, the king, your father. Now, they go on and explain the circumstances around seeing his father. Okay, they talk about how he's wearing his armor. They talk about how he won't speak to them. These are all things that are fairly clearly understood. He looked frowningly. Yep, he looked sort of sorrowful, not really angry. And he fixed his eyes on you, yes. And he didn't speak? Nope, he would not speak with us. Okay? Then, Hamlet says, I will watch tonight. Perchance it'll walk again. Horatio says, I bet it will. Warren means literally, I bet it will. Now, watch Hamlet's response. Hamlet is just as wise regarding theology, regarding ghosts, as is Horatio. Watch how Hamlet talks about this ghost. If it assume my noble father's person, I'll speak to it. Though hell itself should gape and bid me hold my peace, even if it seems obvious that this ghost is up to no good, if it looks like my dad, I want to talk to him. That's irrational. That is not wise. That is not calm. That is giving in to that desire to talk to your dad because you love him so much. I pray you all, if you have concealed this sight, let it be tenable in your silence still. Whatever happens tonight, give it an understanding, but no tongue. Don't talk about this. Okay? I'll see you between 11 and 12. They say, okay, we'll do it. And then they all leave. And Hamlet says, my father's spirit in arms. All is not well. If he is in his armor, something is wrong. If he is preparing to fight, if he looks like he wants to fight, something is amiss. Okay? Now, we saw this too. Horatio saw this too. Marcellus saw this too. Yeah, the king in armor. Well, they're looking at getting invaded. So that makes perfect sense. However, Hamlet says, I doubt some foul play. Doubt here means believe. Half of the time when you look at doubt, doubt is either going to mean I believe something or I doubt something. And you can never really tell except by context. But he says, I doubt some foul play. I want to get there so I can see him. I hope the night gets here quickly so I can see what's going on. This bit of these couple of lines here, this helps us understand Hamlet's irrational, extreme, idealistic love for his father that overpowers his reason. He wants to talk to the ghost no matter what.